Resources, 444 South Fifth Street. So the board did continue this case to this meeting from the October 31st meeting based on the agreement to accept additional information from opposition to this case. And in doing so, the board did give until Thursday at 5 p.m. last week for additional information to be submitted. We did receive information, and that information was submitted to the board. So that you should have that information from what was collected. I will also point out that this case also went to the Development Review Committee on Wednesday of last week because the site is plan certain. It was rezoned in 1988. At least a portion of it was. The DRC did continue that case to I believe to the next DRC meeting, or that was after this particular. The next DRC meeting after the BOZA meeting, and to allow the board to take action on the land use question for this use. So I'm going to go through the PowerPoint now, and if you have any questions, I can answer those at the end. So this site is a conditional use permit, a request for a private proprietary club. It's a split zone between R4 and R6 zoning districts. Next slide. So the proposal is for to do a private club it's in the location of the Glenmary Golf Club that closed in 2015. The applicant proposes to convert at least a portion of the club to a private proprietary club. Staff does have concerns regarding the restaurant and private and also the driving range, since these uses are not permitted by the underlying zoning as principal uses. And therefore, the applicant should address how these uses would be considered accessory to the private club. There's also a condition of approval proposed regarding this issue as well. And the applicant should also discuss the membership requirements for the club. Some discussion happened at DRC regarding that. I will point out when staff was discussing the idea of membership is more of not necessarily how much it's going to cost, but it's more, is this a monthly membership? Is it an annual membership? That kind of thing. If the board remembers, we did have an appeal case before you all for the Biernos on River Road, where there was a question about, it was a private proprietary club, CUP, and there was a question about using, say, daily membership or something like that for people to go to that use, and whether that was just really just a restaurant and not really a club. So that's a concern for staff. Next question, or excuse me, next slide. Staff received comments regarding the uses proposed and how those uses would be operated as part of the club. Staff also received comments regarding the hours of operation for outdoor activities, especially noise related to the operation of the mini amphitheater. I will point out that the applicant did state at DRC that the hours would be capped at 11 p.m. for the club use, for all the uses within the club. And so the applicant will address that further in their presentation. Next slide. This is location of the site in Jefferson County. Next slide. Zoning map of the property and surrounding properties. As you can see, this is a portion of the golf club. It includes the clubhouse, which we'll show in a future slide. Next slide, please. To show a little clearly, you can see existing parking lot and existing club building. There's also a building that's proposed to be converted to a wedding venue, and there's also the old pool on the property, as well as tennis courts on the property. Next slide. This is the site plan, and if you all want to have a kind of the full copy one, I can give you one if you need to look at it. It's kind of a little in the scan, didn't scan it very well for some of the existing development.
I would appreciate a copy because I want to look to see where the wedding venue is going to be.
Okay, let me bring it up.
Thank you. Anybody else need to see the? Sorry. Okay, that's fine.
And Madam Chair, I will point out that the applicant's presentation also goes through the development plan as well. So they have a color. Yeah, they have a color rendering of the development plan. Okay. So they'll be going through that in their presentation as well. Next slide. Some existing images. This is an existing photo of the clubhouse building. as well as the parking lot. Next slide. Another photo of the parking lot surrounding area. Next slide. There's a couple things here in the staff findings. So, the conditional use permit meets the specific standards of review as listed in LDC section 4244, which is the private proprietary club conditional use. The board must determine whether the description of the proposed club and associated uses meets the intent of the private proprietary club CUP. The board must determine whether hours of operation are necessary for the club, specifically in relation to outdoor uses. The board must determine whether a condition on the number of people using the proposed golf driving range should be placed on the CUP. And based upon the information in the staff report and the testimony and evidence provided at the hearing, the board must determine if the proposal meets the standards established in land development code for this type of conditional use permit. I'll also point out that the applicant in their presentation will talk about the potential maximum number of members for this club. I believe it was 300 is what was discussed at DRC. Next slide. Required actions to approve or deny the conditional use permit for a private proprietary club. In the staff report, we did talk a little bit about some of the new developments, mostly a reuse of existing development, but they will be building a new pool. There are a deck or two being proposed to be added to the club building. It's for its conversion to a restaurant. And there's also the existing maintenance building that's proposed to be converted to the wedding venue. And then the old swimming pool area is proposed to be converted to the mini amphitheater use. There's also tennis courts, the conversion of those to pickleball courts, and there's also sand volleyball court is also proposed to be developed. I believe that's all the uses. There's also a few things related to golf, like one of the fairways is proposed to be used for a golf driving range. And then there's a couple putting greens that are also proposed as well. I think I've covered all those, but I'm sure the applicant will cover anything that I've missed in those.
And we will be
uses.
listening.
Okay. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions, members of Chris?
One question.
Yes, you may.
Chris, I recall reading some information. You've got the case, in the case summary and background, you list all the proposed uses. Are any of those uses dependent on the intent of the member or the desire of the members for those particular uses, or are they all?
Well, I would think the
part of
board,
the plan?
the board needs to look in them. So there was some discussion in the applicant's justification regarding the mini amphitheater in particular about whether, well, that one and the wedding venue, whether the members wanted that or not. I would think as part of a land use review for the board, you need to consider that those would be
Will
developed.
happen.
And those are proposed to be with the club.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members? And thank you, Chris. We're going to call for, let's see. Got to put them in order. Jeff McKenzie. Are all the people that are like Christina, and I'm sure he will speak if necessary, correct? Derek Triplett. Are all of them planning to speak?
Well, I think we'll see, but
Okay, why don't we just have them stand and I'll swear them in with you.
if everyone who's thinking of considering speaking could just stand.
Okay, Neil Robertson as well? Okay, okay, well, they're all planning to speak in support.
Yes.
Okay, then I will just swear. I'm glad I asked for this. Okay, I'm going to ask all of you to swear right now. I don't need your names. When you come to the podium, then that's when you'll give your name, address, and zip code. Okay? Thank you. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to the Board of Zoning Adjustment is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Right now, Mr. McKenzie, I just need you to give us your name, address, and zip for the record.
Jeff McKenzie with the firm of Denton's Bingham Greenbaum, 3500 PNC Tower, 30202.
May continue.
Thank you. If you would click to the next slide. This is, as you've seen from the staff report, this is a an existing facility that was in existence some time ago. This is to give you the update. At the time, it was an 18-hole golf course. The amenities included at that time a restaurant, swimming pool, tennis courts, locker rooms, the putting green, other uses, the swimming pool, et cetera, all of which were part of the original development that was presented to owners when they purchased, is also part of the restrictions, and I'll talk about those in a second, that were in place and of record with regard to all the lots. It was established in conjunction with the creation of the Glenmary subdivision, and each of the members of the Glenmary subdivision were invited to be members of the Glenmary Country Club. The club was successful for a while, and eventually, I think with it's happened nationwide, golf is less in favor than certainly it was prior to this. In about 2015, they dwindled down to 30 members and couldn't support the costs of the facility, and the facility closed. That was the Glenmary Golf Club. What we're proposing is the Glenmary Club. If you can click to the next slide. As you can see, this is the condition. We'll just flip a couple of these slides so you'll see. Before my client stepped in, this is what was presented there since 2015's closing. This slide is the clubhouse. Not quite as inviting as the prior picture. Go ahead. Again, part of the clubhouse. Continue, next slide. This was the swimming pool, and there's a small building there with the swimming pool. The swimming pool has now been filled in. Next slide. Another view of that area. Next. And that is, it gives you an idea of the condition of the property. Next. So the new Glenmary Club, and this is property that is otherwise deed restricted to be only for recreational use. So what's being proposed here is the use for this property. It is, again, restricted for other uses. So other than what we're proposing, and this is, I would submit the perfect use for this property. This is the property today, having been renovated and brought back around, new windows, doors, repaired roof, structural improvements, all the other things necessary to bring the building up to speed for the benefit of the neighbors and to have this club in place. The amenities include the chipping and putting green, again at the same locations, a swimming pool, which is in a different location closer to the clubhouse as proposed, a volleyball court, which again involves no real structural improvements. It's just a court and a couple of poles and a net. The a pickleball court, which is the conversion of the existing tennis courts to a much more popular use today. Again, tennis hasn't quite seen the problems that golf has, but we're just adapting with the times. So pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the United States right now, and would be a draw for the use of this club. The idea is to have a club for members only, strictly limited to the members, paying members, to be very clear. Those members will come from the Glenmary subdivision and from other areas. In the deed restrictions of record, it states that the Glenmary Country Club, the golf course club, would have members from inside the 800 plus lots in the development, as well as members outside the Glenmary subdivision. That was in the deed restrictions of record from the beginning and is still of record today. So there's been a lot of conversation about outsiders coming in and being members of this club. There will be no exclusion of members of this club. Those who are paying members will be able to come to the country club. So I apologize for being so clear with that, but it seems to be something that folks want to bring up again and again. As is mentioned, these are the items there. We'll have a restaurant, as country clubs do. Hopefully people in the neighborhood will stroll over and have a meal or two and be part of this club. Again, hopefully they'll hang out by the pool and play volleyball and be part of a community. That's what this was set up to be. And again, absent the golf course, at least, we'll at least have these golf course users. The mini amphitheater, I want to touch on that. Amphitheater is, again, not a yum center. This is a grassy slope that naturally provides a perfect amphitheater. And so we've been over-inclusive in our plan to make sure that you know that that is the intended use of that grassy hillside. Nothing else is proposed there other than to put in maybe some concrete, a pad at the bottom of that, so whoever is presenting or playing cello or something at this in this hillside would have a flat place to be. That is over near where the swimming pool used to be. We're just trying to make use of, there was a pool house kind of building there that would provide the backdrop to this hillside use. So I want to make sure that we're not leading anyone to think there will be anything beyond that in an amphitheater. The barn that exists there today is a dilapidated barn. It was the storage for the carts and maintenance for the carts. In trying to come up with a use for that and some financial backing for fixing that property up, my client has proposed it be used as a wedding venue. This was brought up at our community meetings. We've held 2 meetings with folks in the subdivision and in the community, and was very popular with them. And everybody wants to know where they can marry their children and have other events there. As mentioned, we will limit the use of that facility to 200 people. I think we can very easily limit it to 200. At the DRC, there was a conversation about what the potential possible number of users would be. I think we'd be difficult to get 200 in that barn as is, even completely improved. So it's just not a large space. And it's a lengthwise rectangle. So again, having just married off 2 of my kids, I've seen way too many venues before I had to write those checks. So that gives you an idea of that use. And that was in response to a dilapidated structure, once again, in trying to find some use for that structure. No one wants to leave that in place. Let's see, this is, again, just restoring the property to its use. I want to make sure I've hit on each of the points. If we can go to the next slide. This is the renovations underway, just to show you what's been done and what's underway at the property. Next slide. Next. You can see as things are greening out, and by next spring, we anticipate a pretty glorious, I can go to the next slide. And this shows the layout. It's an aerial view, but it does give you an idea of where it sits. It is spaced very, very appropriately for its use as it was in the original design of the structure, and so of the club, and having no issues there with setbacks or limitations. Uses are 30 feet away from property lines, et cetera, as required. As I mentioned, all the amenities are limited to members as part of the club membership. On the number of members, the deed restrictions at the time and the contemplation of this original development included all lots, and by its design included, hopefully, that every single person who would come to and purchase at the Glenmary subdivision would join. So they were anticipating in excess of 800 member families. And the golf course, I know this from many golf courses I've been involved with, that you really need 350 extremely active members who are playing golf to have something like that be viable. The whole idea here is to be financially viable, so everybody in the community says, I want to buy that lot, I want to go to that club. This is the idea of this facility. So in this, as part of our plan, it's our goal to shoot at 300 people, which I think 350 starts to get there. But again, that's our goal is 300 people, I think, as I've stated before. I think that's 300 members, because you'll have a member who might have a spouse or kids or whatever, but 300 members tries to get to the point where you have enough people on a regular basis using the facilities so that it's a healthy club. The hours of operation, as mentioned, one of the comments from the prior to the last hearing that we had here was a request that we limit the hours to prior to 11 p.m. and we're fine with that. That's our intention as well. The driving range, I think there was a question on the staff report about the folks at the driving range. That is an ancillary use, but is exciting and can be of a certain draw to members. And so we will limit those. The question was about whether we will have a broad driving range, et cetera. We're talking about 4 tee boxes, 4 tees for that driving range. So this is not a heavy use. This is just for those who are putting and using a putting green. They should be able to go over and hit some balls in that direction. That area is, if you can go to the next slide, I think you can go to the next one. Maybe that shows a little better. Who has the magic pointer? Anyone? Well, at any rate, there, the golf hole, if you can go directly across to your right, to your right, to your right, right there, right where you were. That is the golf hole. So those who are hitting on this driving range are hitting exactly in the valley of a golf hole that was designed for exactly those drives of golf balls. And so we believe that fits perfectly with the other uses, what expectations of the members and all, and hopefully is an attractive use for the members of the club, including, of course, the members of the Glenmary subdivision. The fees, I think it was mentioned about the fees, those will be subject to, just market. I think fees are up and down from time to time. There are other competitors, I won't name names, that are private clubs, and they run about 135 or so per month, somewhere in that range. And that is, again, I don't want to confine ourselves to anything. This is not the forum for the economic decision, but that's our goal, is to have true fees for true members. As you can see, we're adding no new buildings. There's a question about nuisance, and that's always comes up in any use of any kind, and we will obey the laws with regard to nuisances. We don't believe there's an issue here, and you'll hear from our supporters of their support for the proposed uses as you have here. I want to address the letter that was received, I think, prior to our last meeting, and this was postponed to this week. And I appreciate, and I certainly appreciate that we happen to have a 1 week. That was a special meeting, I guess, and we roll right into this meeting, or vice versa. So 1 week was convenient for all to allow additional comments. And I would point out, for the record, there were no additional comments in opposition, but in fact, those who were online, who were able to watch, wanted to be on, and if you'll hear from others here today in support. I would submit that those who are speaking for those who are members of the board of the Homeowners Association should not be assumed to speak for 850 members or whatever the total number of lots out there, as was, I think, presumed by the comments. I believe that there is based upon the information you'll hear, that there is quite a bit of dissension from those who are within the Glenmary subdivision. We have held meetings. Those comments are on the record, of the people who showed up at our meetings who were in support of a use that improves this, that reopens a club, that puts those uses out there. The parking lot conversations were about what would the rates be, and those kinds of things. So I think that's exactly what we would have expected. I'll let the supporters speak, and if necessary, I can handle anything in rebuttal, of course, but I do want to point out that you have there the comments of supporters that have been received since in this past week. And I don't know who will want to speak, but just to note a couple of those. They are in support of this facility. Some of their comments are that the subdivision has been held hostage by the Homeowners Association, who voted at one time to purchase this property in full, and then a new group of owners or a new group of the board of the subdivision were elected not to proceed with that closing. That was after a vote of the homeowners. And that was the last full vote of the homeowners in a way that they could express their interest other than our meetings. So we believe we have very, very strong support among the majority of those in the area, and would hope that we've addressed all of the issues that you need addressed. The staff report in general, as you see, is in support. We think we meet all those requirements, and having now gone through this with the DRC, where they, as was mentioned on the record, then postponed for their next meeting due to this postponement, we believe that the DRC will find in favor of this project as well. Are there any questions?
I have one, Mr. McKenzie. I said Kinsey.
McKenzie.
Okay. Regarding item D of the conditional use permit standard. Signage shall not be provided to advertise the restaurant or driving range as separate uses. You all are aware of that, so there will be no signs advertising the restaurant or the driving range to the public.
Absolutely. This is, the signage will be the Glenmary Club, and we invite all of you to join.
And
Okay,
other-
I'm just
yeah,
helping out on the
which
sales
means
side.
they have to be members of the, I just want to be sure
No, no.
because,
Oh,
you
no.
know, all righty.
Um,
There was one other one I wanted. I'll have time in rebuttal. So
Okay, I was just going to say, I'll whip through those very quickly. It is going through one, two, through them. It is consistent with the plan. It is compatible with neighboring uses. It has been designed precisely for this. And those who have come in have now moved into knowing there was a golf course there with these amenities. This is exactly the situation that would support our request. It is served by adequate public facilities. You have all the buffers built in that you see on the plan, 30 feet and otherwise. There will be a fence around the pool, at least 6 feet in height. That's for everybody's safety. And the signage, we certainly agree to the signage requirements. So we're in agreement with the staff report. I don't think there's anything in there that gives us any question. I think with regard to the courts, that we will have a fence along the backside of those courts that will have the acoustic barrier in that fence. That's one other fact I think we
Okay.
determined.
Any other questions from Mr. Horton?
Thank you. Mr. McKenzie, do you know how many lots are available in Glenmary yet?
Well, if you want to buy now before this club is announced, I'm not aware of how many lots are available. There are 850 plus total lots, I believe, in the entire subdivision. It has been in place a long time. There are several members. I've met people who have been owners in one location and have moved to yet another, still within the subdivision. So it's I think a pretty strong development. But no, I'm not aware how many lots are available now.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think we have one potential buyer in the room, but I don't want to call him out. Okay, I will. Our own surveyor our engineer is looking at this property as well. So it just goes to show, once you get out there, you can see it really is going to be something.
Okay, let me just make this, go ahead and ask the question. I can wait.
No, I'm good.
No, you asked
I
your
wasn't
question.
even gonna ask anything.
Oh,
I was just making a move.
oh. You've already used up 15 minutes, so any speakers now will be over the limit, and I will have to allow that same time to opposition.
That'll be fine. I don't
All
know
right,
that
I just have to make that for a record. Okay, anybody who speaks now, it's over the 15 minutes, and the opposition will get those minutes.
I look forward to Mr. Cox using that time.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr., you got a question? Chris Thieneman, you have anything you need to say? Okay, Derek Triplett. Okay, unless we have questions. Neil Robertson? Robertson, okay. I need your name, address, and zip code. You've already been sworn in.
Neil Robertson, 5927 DeWitt Drive.
Zip code.
4258.
Thank you. You may proceed with your testimony.
Okay, yes. I'm here today to talk about the Glenmary subdivision that I knew nothing about before Mr. Thieneman was talking to me about an opportunity for me to buy some property there, which I went on to do. And unfortunately, it was next door to the HOA president who didn't like the fact of what I was planning to do with the property and around that subdivision, especially the golf course, where we was talking about having a Halloween party for kids. And the HOA president said that we didn't need those people around here. And I'm it took me back because I was very excited about the fact that, hey, got this property. Hey, we can do new things, meet the people in the community, which I did that. And a lot of people in that community, they're great people. They welcomed me with open arms. But the unfortunate thing, like I said, I had some of the people, professional people, that's my friends, come out to the property. And the HOA president alarmed all the members, all the residents in the community that I was having homeless people come there to shack up. So they was riding by, saying some things to me that, I'm never gonna accept somebody talking to me like that, and I never accepted it. And it just took me back. So to make a long story short, what I did, it hurt me so bad, because even when the kids came out, because the people in the community, they came out there with the kids, we did a trunk or treat. We wasn't trying to do anything in the community other than, just try to bring a little life to it, because you see the way the clubhouse looked before Mr. Thieneman took it upon himself to try to make that eyesore look good for the people in the community. And I wanted to publicly thank you, man, for being nice to the kids. They were excited about the things that we did, but I got out of that community. And it's only because of the fact, showed it back to Mr. Thieneman, and it's only because of the fact of the way the guy was talking to me, going back, doing these little things that, like, where I come from, you just don't do, because you could get hurt from that. But I'm not saying that I was going to do anything like that, because I respect people and I respect your views and your opinion. But when you say different things like that, to clearly let me know that you're racist, and I'm saying that because that's not the only thing that he was doing, trying to make sure that I didn't come in that community with those people. And then, I started looking into things. I'm like, okay, how did this guy keep winning the president on the board? And then some people was talking about some of the things that he do to remain in that seat. And, I like to challenge people, with things. I'm not trying to fight you or anything like that, but I will challenge you though. So I just, like I said, it left a sore taste in my mouth. And I decided just to get out of that neighborhood. But then I'm looking back now, because I'm saying there was so many good people in that community. And I let a few people stop me from helping other people. But, to blatantly lie on me and say things to the people in that community about me that wasn't true. Like I said, it hurt me, but not to a point where I was just going to lay down though, So
let me ask you, did you move?
Oh yes, I
You
had to
moved
get
it.
out of there because it was right next door to him, and I don't want no trouble with anybody.
Okay.
I don't want no trouble, and I don't want to live by anybody that's going to cause problems.
Okay.
And I knew it would be a problem, so it was best that I leave. But I shouldn't have left. I should have stayed, because, like I said, there's so many good people in that community. To just let a few people stop the community from thriving and growing, and even with the clubhouse, like I came over there. Now, I'll tell you guys that immediately after that, the clubhouse got broken into, and they scribbled on the wall, nigga. So, and I'm not saying that the community did, because like I'll say it again, I'll vouch for them. There's a lot of good people in that community. Yes,
Neil, help me. I'm a little confused. So did you buy a lot?
it was just a lot.
It was an
Yes, sir.
empty lot,
Yes, sir.
and that lot you were going to build a house on.
Well, I wasn't really deciding what I was going to do with it. At that point, I was just trying to figure out what could I do. But I knew one thing to do. I wanted to take kids from downtown in West Louisville who never, ever got to see some of the things, that's amazing houses and things that's in there. I was going to bring them out there, bring them to the country club, like I said. And we did. We got a chance to bring them out there to a Halloween trunk or treat. And they were very excited. It was safe. And it was good for them.
Now, did you do the trunk or treat?
Yes.
And so is this your profession?
Well, man, my profession is whatever you need, that's what I'll do.
Give me your number.
you.
I'll call you after this.
Yeah, call me. Except I don't paint or build though. My hands are like that.
No, all joking aside.
Yeah.
So this was just a a passion with you?
Yes,
You're not,
absolutely.
you don't have an organization that goes.
Yes, I have a
puts on-
West Louisville Urban Coalition. So what I
Okay.
did this summer, I took 20 black boys because, you know, that's very much needed. And some people was offended because I called it a black boys summer group, whatever I was calling it, but I put that on there. And some people were very offended for that. And they was like, well, hey, we won't, you know, give you any money to, you know, based on that unless you change the name. I'm like, I'm not changing the name. So what we did, it was a 10-week program where we taught them, the main thing I told them to do, you have to be able to communicate. Look people in the eye, tell them what you know, want. And if you don't like something, talk to them respectfully. Taught them how to open a bank account. Taught them how to talk to women or girls, their little girlfriends, you know, be respectful and talk. It was like, I mean, like I said, took them out to Eastern Kentucky to teach them how to farm. You know, some of them know how to farm and cut up fish and just a lot of amazing things that they're not being able to get in West Louisville. So, we wasn't bringing it out to Glenmary though, like that, but I wanted some of the kids to come out there.
So just, I'm trying to get, it was a vacant lot, and Chris, do you own those lots?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and did you sell it back to him, or?
Yes, I did.
I have to have Chris come up.
Running.
I'm
Running,
just,
in a hurry.
it's a noble gesture. Good luck with it in the
Yeah,
future.
well, thank you very
Sorry you
much.
had a bad experience.
Oh, yeah, but I'll get over it.
Okay, thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you all for.
Mr. Thieneman, I'm gonna have to have you come up and give your name, address, and zip because you answered a question without being at the podium.
My bad, I asked you.
That's okay, but I have to have
Yeah,
his
my name
name
is
in
Chris
the
Thieneman,
record.
2606 Elias Circle, Louisville, Kentucky, 40222.
Thank you. And you did answer the question that you sold the property to Mr. Robertson.
I bought the property and he wanted a lot. I sold him a lot. And then he said, I want to get my money back. And I paid him for the lot back.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, can we ask
Yes,
one quick question?
yes, you may.
Could we go back to the question of how many vacant lots are for sale?
Now, there's a realtor here that they'll be able to answer it, lives in the
Okay,
subdivision.
so you don't own all the remaining?
No, sir.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
Who owns the rest of the golf course?
It's still Par Golf, the same original. I've just been buying holes at it.
Sections of it from,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to now call for, and you're keeping up with the time for me, correct? Thank you. I'm calling for Judy Patton, Patton, in support.
Good afternoon.
Good
Thank you
afternoon.
for allowing me to come. I'm Judy Patton. I live at 10525 Black Iron Road, 40291. I will tell you that we have Superior Builders bought the last 15 lots that were in the estate section. Currently, there's about 5 or 6 that are still unbuilded on. I do not know his plans for those lots at this time, but there are a few left.
Thank you.
I was asked to talk about the property values of Glenmary that were affected by the closing of the golf course. I went to our local association, Greater Louisville Association of Realtors, and gleaned through their subjective information so I could share with you today. During the period of time that was just after the closure of the golf course and during the time of the turmoil beforehand, the average sales price was $299,135. When it sold, people were getting 91% of their listed value. That's 8% less than they listed for. And this is a very important statistic. During that period of time, days on market are a big loss of value. The longer it stays on the market, the more tainted the property began. So during that period of time, again, average sale price $299,135, 91% of the listed value, 108 days on the market during the turmoil. Like communities in a 2 to 5 mile radius here is the statistics on that. The average sale price was $315,610. People received 98% of their list value. Here's the big one, 15 days on market. So what was happening during that period of time had a tremendous effect on our days on market. I also say that I have been a real estate agent for 33 plus years. I started when I was 2. But I've practiced real estate and I have a broker's license. I practiced in Georgia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and moved here 12 years ago to Glenmary and began my career here. So I bring a lot of experience to the table. I want to also say that as a realtor, we're out with people and their buyers, and if there are like properties, price-wise, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, whatever it might be, and one community has amenities, a pool, a clubhouse, activities, recreation, over one that does not, in my experience, 9 out of 10 people will choose an amenity providing property, whether it has a pool or a clubhouse, etc. Then I also picked up some other new statistics from my research. In the last 3 years or so, I looked at how many new properties were taken over and sold during that time, and old had moved and new had come in. A total of 226 properties in Glenmary changed hands in the short period of time in the last couple of 3 years. That is 26% of our new residents of Glenmary. And to my knowledge, there has been no canvassing or survey or input from these new residents, which represent a large population. I am in support, was in support when this began. I was actually on the board of directors at the time when our community took a vote. I was totally supportive of us taking hold of this. I support Mr. Thieneman and his plans. I also want to go on the record and say that since I've been here in Louisville, Mr. Thieneman and I have not had one transaction nor any type of real estate, either commercial or residential. So I'm not biased or anything for or against. I am neutral in that area, but I do support anything of his plans. If you have any questions, you can ask me.
We will hold the rest of the questions until I hear from everybody in support because we are on other people's time.
Okay, thank you.
Christopher Worth.
Hello, my name is Chris Worth. Address is 13520.
Hold the mic up.
Address is 13520 Ridgemore Drive, and zip code is 40059.
Thank you.
I want to voice my support for the community. I recently had a similar experience. So I'm in real estate, commercial real estate. There was a club that was for sale for a little over a year and a half. A very similar club. This one is called Forest Springs Club off of the 265 and Old LaGrange Road. It's right in the middle of a beautiful neighborhood. About approximately 600 homes there. It's right in the center. It had been dilapidated, vacant for about 2 years. We saw it on market for over a year and a half. And finally we said, look, this is something that we would love to improve on. Initially we had similar experience. The neighbors were skeptical. The HOA was skeptical. They were not sure, about what we were going to do there. Rightfully so. We very quickly won over the neighbors. They liked our plans. The HOA, not so much. They, were still kind of held back. But once communication opened with them, things improved. And I mention all this is, the property itself was heavily dilapidated. The parking lot had 4-inch gaps of cracks, and that's now been redone. We had an Olympic-sized pool there, had a horrendous leak because when they left, they just got up and walked out. So all the plumbing was shot. We did drywall, paint, electrical. The pool pumps were shot. Our first bid on the pool was $350,000 to repair it. And so it became obvious why nobody had touched it. But we went in there, we finally got it renovated. We have food truck events there. The neighbors love it. There's birthday parties in the clubhouse. We just had a lot of really positive experiences. We passed out, Halloween candy this Halloween, and people really came to it. And our goals for this community was just to make it nicer and really to make it to break even. Our goal was about 150 members. the first year, and we ended up, or sorry, 150 households the first year, and we ended with 280 households the first year. And that was nowhere near our expectations, but the community was very, very happy to see it because the tennis courts had weeds that were 4 feet tall. It just looked horrendous. It was pretty close to the entrance of the neighborhood. You kind of have to drive by it. And that absolutely impacts property values. It impacts quality of life. It impacts, frankly, desirability and all sorts of things. But I just wanted to give our experience that it's been it's quite a task to undertake to get that functioning properly. But it was well worth it, and people are very happy with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If the members have questions, I'll ask later. Trenda Metcalf?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and Board. Again, my name is Trenda Metcalf, and I reside at 10705 Hall Farm Court in Glenmary. I've owned 3 homes in Glenmary, and as Mr. McKenzie said, I'm one of those that had one in one section and liked it so well that I've got another one in another section. I was also a former member of the clubhouse. It's important to note, first off, that Mr. Cox and our HOA does not represent the majority of the residents or myself. Why would we want to fight someone improving our neighborhood and raising our property values? For the life of me, I cannot understand this. The revitalization of our clubhouse benefits all residents. Spending our money on attorney fees fighting a case that we don't believe in is just wrong. Our HOA is supposed to be seeking the best interests of the residents and our home values. But for the past 9 years, that's not been the case. I'm in support of the revitalization for 3 reasons. First, the subdivision, the scope and size of Glenmary needs amenities to remain competitive with other surrounding subdivisions, and this will also increase our property values. The clubhouse has remained vacant and vandalized over the last 9 years, becoming an eyesore for all to see, while our HOA continues to use stall tactics like the one last Friday presented to you to delay any improvements. This has been a 9-year ordeal, people. It's really amazing. And I'm just so grateful that we're finally getting a forum to speak. We've had many interested parties approach us in the past, like Steve Henry with the Parklands, and also Joe Pusateri with Elite Homes. But each time, without informing residents, our HOA has acted on their own interest and botched several different types of partnerships and improvements. Lastly, having a clubhouse again would foster neighborly camaraderie and friendships, bring residents together instead of divide them. This is what we're all hoping for. Mr. Cox wrote in opposition that Mr. Thieneman was adding amenities not offered before. I think Mr. McKenzie did state that the driving range and practice screen were part of the original clubhouse, but we did have a swimming pool as well, and we had the tennis courts, which he made reference to. But he writes that such operations would impose an adverse effect on neighboring property. The only adverse effect has been having to look at this dilapidated building with graffiti and rodents and everything else. It's been quite an eyesore for the residents and for anyone looking to build in Glenmary or to buy. It's not been something that you want to drive by and really look at. So with respect also to the noise ordinance, he states that pickleball play creates noise level that you'll hear him say that pickleball creates noise levels that exceed 8 times the ambient noise levels to neighboring residents. I'd like to point out that as a former member of the previous clubhouse, I attended many outdoor activities such as karaoke nights, live bands, festivals, bonfires, swimming pool parties, and kids events, all outside. Never was a complaint from surrounding neighbors regarding noise that I'm aware of. The existing tennis courts will be used for pickleball. So I'm not sure how pickleball violates the noise ordinance, but tennis doesn't. So that's kind of confusing to me. But with that, Mr. Thieneman even stated that he would add a berm for landscape to create a noise barrier. And basically, every obstacle that our HOA has brought up, he's agreed to. The 11 p.m. curfew. When I was a member before, I attended many things that went on past 11, 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock. But, you know, he's agreed to bridge that common ground and say 11 o'clock is the close. But in opposition, Mr. Cox states paragraph 6 of our restrictions regarding obnoxious or offensive trade shall not be conducted, which may become a nuisance to the neighborhood. The only real nuisance to the neighborhood has been this 9-year battle between the residents and our HOA. We just are ready for this to end. I encourage you today to approve the conditional use permit presented before you. Voting yes would restore Glenmary back to its original beauty and be a positive impact for our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Have any
you.
questions? Thank
No,
you.
if we do, it'll be after we hear from everybody. I have to schedule this time. Deborah Bowling.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Bowling. I live at 10201 Glenmary Farm Drive. When we moved into our home,
Just give me your zip code.
40291.
Thank you.
When we moved into our home in Glenmary in 2013, the property at 10200 was operating as the Glenmary Golf Club. Our property is directly across the street from the country club property, from the clubhouse property. And the first tee is behind us. The clubhouse is a beautiful structure with amazing architecture details. However, even at that time, it was obvious that it was past its prime. However, following the closure of the clubhouse in 2014 or 15, the building deteriorated substantially. Many individuals throughout the Glenmary subdivision purchased mowers and began mowing the property just to keep it presentable from the view, because when you come in on the main entrance to Glenmary, you're just in a little ways before you see the clubhouse and the property. And so we did a lot of mowing. Between our next door neighbor and I, there were times that we mowed up to 7 acres at one time. And a lot of residents in Glenmary did the same thing, just to try to keep it presentable. And additionally, we were concerned about the wildlife and their encroachment into, closer to our dwellings. We've seen coyotes on the cart path behind our house. Many of the dogs in our neighborhood have been sprayed with skunks. So the wildlife is a real concern. We've seen it at its worst. Over the years, it's looked like an abandoned, haunted house with little of its former grandeur visible. The current condition of the property is night and day what it was when Mr. Thieneman purchased the property, and it was apparent that he immediately had a plan of action to clean and restore this gem to its former glory. Almost immediately, crews were clearing the overgrown mess that was consuming the structure. Since then, broken windows have been replaced, rotted areas repaired, painted, as well as new landscaping installed. And that's just on the outside. There are no longer vandals and people seeking shelter in the facility, and there is someone to call when it's questionable behavior. Because remember, I live directly across the street from this. So when it was vacant, there were times at night we would see flashlights inside reflecting off of the windows and would call the police or the previous owner. And since then, since Mr. Thieneman has purchased, there's even been a couple occasions that my husband, when walking the dog or on his way back from his run, has heard children in the barn, and we've been able to contact Mr. Thieneman instead of having to contact the police, who are already overworked and being able to avoid bothering them with such matters. When the Glenmary Golf Club was operational, the amenities were much like Mr. Thieneman has proposed in his application. to this board, putting putting greens, driving range, swimming pool, dining facility, tennis courts. And by the way, the tennis courts previously were also used for pickleball, and pickleball equipment was sold in the pro shop at the country club. The proposed wedding venue seems to be a big question, but I've heard stories of my neighbors who have had beautiful weddings there or attended weddings of friends. Some that were, the ceremony was out at the fountain, the receptions in the clubhouse. The more I listen to the stories of the birthday parties, neighborhood cookouts, car shows, as well as many other activities that once took place here, I long to meet more of my Glenmary neighbors at a place such as this. I believe a vibrant club here would be a win, not just for the residents of Glenmary, but for Fern Creek and ultimately the city of Louisville. I fully believe a well-managed and maintained facility offering various amenities to the residents of our area far outweigh possible objections. I encourage you to approve the proposed plan before you today. I encourage you to say yes to a positive future for Glenmary. A success for the Glenmary Club is a success for the city of Louisville. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jennifer Eberly? Is she online? Was not able to make it. Okay,
She's online.
oh, okay.
I'll bring her over to the panel.
Thank you.
Miss Everly, you can control your microphone now. As a time check, we're at 34 minutes, over 34 minutes.
Over 34 minutes. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
I
Hi.
need
I'm
to swear you in.
Okay.
Okay, just a minute. I need to swear you in. So if you, with your right hand raised, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to the Board of Zoning Adjustment is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you if you, please not repeat things that you've already heard because we are 34 minutes over the support time. So if, I don't have a problem with you speaking, but we're going to have to start limiting the time now. So I hope you can go like no more than
Yes.
5 minutes.
I'll make it short and sweet. I'm Jennifer Eberly. I live at 7504 Kendrick Crossing Lane, Louisville, Kentucky, 40291. I've lived in the subdivision for 27 years, built 3 homes. I obviously love Glenmary and want it to succeed. I'm in support of the revitalization of the clubhouse. Our neighborhood has such great potential, and I want it to be that sought after community that it once was. I'm tired of the fighting. I was in favor of purchasing the golf course as part of our the HOA. And I'm in favor of the efforts that Chris Thieneman is trying to do for the clubhouse and for the betterment of our neighborhood. And I'm in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Madison. Is he online? He is online? Okay, thank you. Mark Madison, I need to swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Hello?
I'll unmute him. Mark, are you there?
I am, but I'm not here for this case.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. It was with my list, and so we will take care of you later. That ends the support, people in support of this case. We're now ready for Mr. Don Cox. Oh, I'm sorry. Members of the board, do you all have questions first of anyone who spoke in support? I'm trying to save us time. Nobody has questions? Okay. All right. Mr. Cox, you may come forward.
do you want to call for neutral?
Oh, stars.
I don't think there are any.
Okay, you have anyone online for neutral? Because I don't have anyone signed up for neutral.
Okay. Just a formality. I think we're good. We don't have anybody online.
I'm sorry.
No one came forward online.
Thank you. You may come forward, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Don Cox.
Oh yeah, I need to swear you in, but is there anyone else who is going to speak in opposition to this case and did not fill out a speaker form because I don't have them? I do have one person named, no, I don't think so. They live in zip code 40212. I'm not sure.
Madam Chair, I have one person online that wants to speak in opposition as well.
Okay, this is opposition to this case. Okay. Mr. Cox and Mr. Swisenhart. Okay. We have someone that filled out for, I guess it's 215. Do we have a 215 case on the agenda? Okay, then that's what that would be. And this one says the same thing. So I got two that need to be 215. Yeah. Okay, then I only have two people signed up in opposition. Is that correct?
One online.
And one online. Okay. So if I could get the person online if we can hear you say I do, I'll get Mr. Cox and Mr. Swinehart, all three of you to speak, to be sworn in right now with your right hand raised. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to the Board of Zoning Adjustment is the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, I see the person online said I do. And I also see Mr. Swisenhart. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, sir.
To point out to Joe, we have a clock ticking down to restart, so.
Oh, we got to start over again? Okay.
No, we just need to postpone
I'm
and
not-
restart.
I'm not going to take that long, I promise.
Okay. So can I go ahead or what do I do? Will we be able to be recorded? No? Oh, proceed. You may begin, Mr. Cox, with your name, address, and zip code.
Yes, my name is Don Cox. I I work at 500 West Jefferson Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202.
Thank you.
I'd like to, and first I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to present the letter we presented and to consider it. I know the letter was late. I'm not going to get into our excuses for that, but I appreciate the opportunity. And for that reason, I don't intend to go back over what's in the letter. I've just got a few points I want to make because I'm assuming everyone is.
That's fine because the board members wanted to have time to read it, so they've had a week to read it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me say what this is not about. And I've been representing the HOA out there for, 5 to 7 years. And the HOA doesn't just walk down the street and show up. It's elected. And they have votes, and the property owners out there elect who is on the board. And so this board, HOA, is the product of the votes of a majority of the people voting out there. So I am speaking on behalf of the board, who speaks on behalf of a majority of the board members out there. Second, this is not about the circumstances surrounding the failure of the golf course. We heard out here about how everything was great, and then the board said they were going to buy the golf course and didn't buy the golf course, and that has nothing to do with whether or not we're going to have this project here or not. Those circumstances were litigated in court. The board prevailed. It went up on appeal. The appeal was dismissed. So that has nothing to do with anything. Then we have the question about the purchase and sale of lots. You heard about that. You gentlemen came up here and said bad things about the president of the HOA, and there was litigation there. And the litigation there was over whether the purchase of the lot was legal. We had already litigated that issue with this board and won and prevailed. You couldn't have more lots than they already had out there. So that issue doesn't have anything to do with whether we're going to have the Glenmary Club. And I'm going to limit myself to those issues, which are the issues that are before this board. And there are 2 or 3 points I want to make about that. The first point is most of the information is in our letter that you all have read. And so, as I said before, I'm not going to go back into that. Now, one of the big issues that concerns us, and it came up in the last meeting over here about this, was parking. And that's really a problem in Glenmary. The traffic is terrible out there. I've argued that before this board. When there was a question about whether we would approve another subdivision and have that traffic drive through Glenmary. And one of the legitimate concerns here is that, is this new project, is it going to be just not new, but just like the old project out there, or is it going to create a level of traffic that's going to cause problems for the neighborhood? And when you heard Mr. McKenzie say, when the golf course failed, there were 30 members. And now we're talking about getting 300 members out there. Now that if they're successful at that, that's going to make a huge difference between what this place was like 7 or 10 years ago and what it's going to be like with these huge numbers of members. So parking is a huge issue, and I would submit that at a minimum, there should be no parking beyond what is already there. Now, could we pull up, I sent, and I don't know who operates.
That's over here, sir.
Oh, okay. Yes, and I'm looking for the 4th page, L 4.2.44. There it is. Okay. And this is really important because what it emphasizes, and there's several other sections that weren't discussed. These were brought up before in one of the other hearings, but the important part, or an important part, of this private proprietary club requirement says where such use is compatible in size and scale with surrounding land uses. Well, I'll give you the golf uses. I'll give you the clubhouse and the swimming pool. But the wedding venue, and that's something we talked about in the prior hearing. So first off, give me a break. Is everybody at the wedding going to be a member? Of course not. So automatically, a wedding is going to be not a meeting of members of the proprietary club. So how do you square that? And if you look at the proposed wedding venue, it's a huge barn, and who's going to police how many people show up there? In fact, who's going to police whether any members are there in the restaurant, in the swimming pool? We don't, in the amphitheater, who knows? So we never had the barn being used as a wedding venue. It was there to house golf carts. And that is not compatible with what went on before, or for that matter, with the Glenmary subdivision, which by the way has 870 homes in it. Second, the amphitheater. We never had an amphitheater there. So first off, again, how are we going to police that members are the only people attending? Well, we've heard before, well, let's have a few guests. I mean, you can't go to the theater and expect that everybody in the theater is a member. But we have a rule that says if you're going to have a proprietary club in a non-commercial setting, then it has to be for members only. Has to be for members only. Otherwise, what does it become? It becomes a commercial wedding venue, a commercial amphitheater. So those two things really are far beyond what was there before. They're really inconsistent, both as to size and scale with surrounding land uses. The surrounding land uses are homes. Finally, and everybody's smiling, I can see when I say the word finally, actually, I have 2 points to make. One is pickleball. And I know you think that is a strange issue. It's just a little ball and a paddle, but there's litigation all over the country with pickleball. And most of it arises when people convert tennis courts to pickleball courts. And we provided in our letter an analysis of the sound levels that were done for me by a sound expert. And we have litigation and a case going to trial where somebody changed their tennis court into pickleball courts, and it was 130 feet from the neighbors, these two neighbors' homes. And if you look at the map here, the pickleball courts are going to be about 50 feet from the property next to them, 50 feet. And we provided you with there's a prohibition on offensive trades or activities. Jefferson County Metro Noise Ordinance. Can you pull that up? This is LMCO 99.02A, and 99.01 defines as unreasonably loud, harsh, or excessive noise any manufactured noise plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet from its point of origin or emanation. There's no question that with a pickleball court in this guy, these people's virtually in their backyard, they're going to be hearing it. It's going to be difficult. So in closing, I think this plan needs to be redone to deal with how are we going to assure that the people using these facilities are members as opposed to just people who walked in or friends or whatever? And second, how are we going to police it? Also, I think some of these uses may be closer to the uses that were made of this property before. I mean, it was a golf course before. Certainly having a driving range for members, or having a putting green for members might make sense. But in toto, this plan includes parts which are not consistent with the prior uses of the property, not consistent with a subdivision plan, and this entire plan should be restructured to ensure that it fits with the requirements for these kinds of clubs, and ways ought to be established to ensure that the club is only used by the members.
I have a question, Mr. Cox. So is the Home Owners Association or whatever the board is called, does that mean that they don't want the members, family members or friends coming to this property? Because I want to finish my question with the statement. I am a member of I am a family member of a person who lives in another elite subdivision in Jefferson County. And my entire family, my brother and his wife are the members of the country club and the homeowners association. But my entire family gets to come to that clubhouse when my brother and his wife get permission from the quote homeowners association. And as many as 42 of my family members go either on Thanksgiving or Christmas. So, and none of the other 40 people at the clubhouse are members. My brother and his wife pay member dues. So are you saying that people like me and my family could not come to this courthouse because we're not members? However, my brother pays a large sum to be a member of that community. So is that what I'm hearing?
Well, what I'm saying is, first off, I have no idea what the rules of that community are.
Well, I think you would know if I told you where it was.
Well, okay, but I don't. And, but here, I would think 42 guests would be excessive. And I don't think 42 guests comply with the requirements of the regulations that we're enforcing.
Okay, so we're enforcing homeowners regulations and not conditional use permit regulations. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm saying, look, all I have is the conditional use regulations, and
I mean, the conditional use regulation says not more than 42 people could be in one of these venues on this site.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't. It doesn't say 42.
Okay, but you just told me 42 people would be too many.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
That's
members. Do you all have questions of Mr. Cox before he takes his seat? Thank you. Mr. Joe Swisenhart. I figured I would be close. I'm never perfect with names.
Joe Schweinhart, 10305 Long Barn Court in Glenmary. I would like to address, my real issue here is this wedding venue, retirement party house, birthday party house, whatever you want to call it. In the staff report here, it talks about restaurants are not permitted, golf course driving range is not permitted in zoning, residential zoning, and it goes on to mention 3 or 4 other things. mentions one thing about that barn being reused. Not a single thing. Biggest thing that's a change in this whole place is that barn. Because we're talking about, first of all, the people in favor of this said, these are very popular now. People are using these things all the time. Well, we're talking about 200 people being in this thing. Where's the parking? You're going to scatter cars all the way up and down that neighborhood where people want to use this barn for retirement party, wedding venue, use it for anything. I don't care whether they're members or not members. You have that many cars on that road, that's not right. That's not what this community is about. And yes, there are some nice houses there, and yes, there are some nice families there. And not every one of them is going to live on the roads that are affected, but that's a lot of traffic to run up and down a residential neighborhood. Now, those in favor also mentioned the fact, I think it was last meeting, that because somebody brought it up, I think it was this meeting, that if that wedding venue is on, we've got 100-something people in there, where are they going to park? Well, they could park there in that little parking lot they've got. Oh, but wait, the restaurant's going to be open. You can have 50, 60 people in there, fill up the parking lot. Oh, but wait, we won't do that then. If we're having the venue open, the wedding venue open, then the restaurant will be closed. Well, when do they usually have weddings and retirement parties? Saturday, Friday nights, prime time for these restaurants. They're not going to want to close then. That's when you're open. That's when you want to get your business. I understand that. So that things are not making sense. This is this parking issue. I don't think you can put enough buffers in there, whatever the buffers will mean, to protect the neighborhood from all the traffic that's going to be lined on the street going down that prime street right next to the clubhouse. And that's the biggest problem I have, because I think you guys need to do something to protect the neighborhood from that. I mean, that private club and all that, everybody wants to see this place be revived, but it has to be done the right way. And maybe this barn just doesn't fit the right way. And that's what I think you need to consider when you're doing this, because I considered in this thing. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'll sit down. Thank you.
I don't, the other person's name is, they're online and I don't have their name. Ron Huff. Okay, Mr. Huff, I need you to give us your name, address, and zip code. You've already been sworn in.
Ron Huff, 10402 Colonel Hancock Drive, Louisville, Kentucky, 40291.
Thank you. You may proceed.
I've lived in Glenmary for 21 years. I'm a board member. I've been a board member for 19 of those 21 years. People have stated the board has been against this development. We are not against this development. Furthest thing from the truth. This board has been, first of all, a homeowners association. Our only job is to maintain the deed restrictions, maintain common area. That is our job. Everybody wants to think it's a lot more than that, but really our directive is to maintain the covenants and conditions of the restrictions and maintain our common area. The board, their only concern has been throughout this whole process was the other issues had to do with maintaining deed restrictions. This one is really the same. The main concern is parking, noise. How do we police it if it's not meeting whatever code is? So those are the main issues. The wedding venue will undoubtedly bring a lot of parking, and it'll be parking on the streets. Our concern is if you've got parking up and down the street on both sides for a wedding and whatever's going on in the club, is there's an emergency vehicles get down through there. They're parked on both sides of the street. It'll be lucky to get a car through there, much less a fire truck or an ambulance. Noise, it's going to generate some noise. Somebody said, well, I was a member of the previous club, and it always shut down at 9 p.m. at night. I think limiting the hours will help. I think if it's, shut down at 9 or 10 p.m. would be an advantage. It kind of discourages some of that activity. This is a residential area, so you've got people, 9, 10 o'clock are starting to wind down and really they don't need noise. The amphitheater will definitely bring noise because that's our concern is the surrounding residents, what they have to hear. Pickleball, same thing. I know they've said they would mitigate that with a fence, and if that will bring the noise level down, I don't know that anybody would have much objections to that. Like I said, our concern is parking and noise, and how to police it. And they've made mention of a pool, but this hearing is the most information I've heard about this project for the last year and a half or so. We've tried to get plans from the developer, and although they've met and they've told us and showed us some pictures, we've never had any details. That's all we want is details. And nobody's, they've made mention of a new pool, no mention of where it's going exactly and when it's going to be installed. These are some details that would be good information for the neighborhood to know. Again, what are we going to do with parking? There's not enough parking space for what's being proposed, and we know it's going to spill into the streets, and you're just creating a hazard by allowing this. That's my concern, and that's why that's the only opposition I'm into is I'm not for, I'm for bringing the club back. Not one resident in this neighborhood wants an eyesore. We agree with that. We're all on the same page. Our concern is the noise and parking, and none of those have really been addressed. Everybody wants to see us sweep those under the rug and we'll worry about it later. Well, the board does not want, the HOA board does not want to worry about it later. We want it dealt with on the front end. So that's what I'll propose it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, do you have questions of Mr. I'm not even going to say it anymore, Swinehart or Mr. Huff? Members of the board? Okay. No one is coming forward with questions, so I'm going to call for Mr. McKenzie to come back for rebuttal.
I'll be as quick as I can. Just quickly on the matters that are before you, the issues raised, we didn't raise these other lawsuits, didn't bring those to the table. I've not been party to those as Mr. Cox has. So they're dear lawyers and real lawyers, and I'm not someone who spends much time in court. So that's been introduced by them, not us. We did have to respond and as required, so we handled that. I would note that the 7-page letter that you have, about 3 pages of that just introduce and speak about the litigation, which I think is irrelevant to this. What we have here is a use that we're trying to rekindle on a piece of property that can't be used for anything else. It is specifically has been designed for this, and the neighbors have come in for this, have come into this development with the knowledge of this use. So just to hit some of these issues quickly. Mr. Cox is conflating traffic with parking. I think those are two separate things. The parking is sufficient, as it's been determined. It'll be at the DRC again, another review of that same issue, but that determination is based on the uses and the metrics that are used in looking at those. As has been mentioned by folks who've lived out there, there are and have been other events out there in the country club when it was a golf club. It didn't make any difference then. It was the same size building, and some of those are outdoors. This just allows for that additional space in that wedding venue. So country clubs are wedding venues. They do have groups of people come in. So the parking is not the issue, and traffic is the same or less. Mr. Cox would have you bring us back to the good old days where there were 30 members who voted to close the club. There are 0 members today. That doesn't mean that that's the standard we should live by. We're trying to put the club in place that will be viable and strong for the community there. And I believe the more members who are members of the neighborhood, that cuts down on the traffic and all, and that is our goal as well. The grassy slope, again, this is not a major structure or anything. This is just a slope of land that we're trying to make a use of a natural a piece of land there. So the conversation about this is not going to be Woodstock on this hillside. This is a very small and reasonable use. The size and scale being not compatible, again, it is exactly compatible. It was determined that years ago when the golf course itself was put in, and this is a smaller use than the expansive use of a golf course that spans across more space than this. So we believe it's clearly compatible. The setbacks, the spacing is incredibly compatible for these uses. With regard to Mr. Cox's pickleball lawsuits that he has in other locations and the information you have, if you've looked carefully at that information he's provided, those are excerpts from a report. He doesn't have all those same standards. The standards used for the measurement of nuisances here you've seen on the board and are distinctly decibels, which is the standard really nationwide for measurement of these of nuisances. We stand by that and we'll live by that, and we will not have that problem. And we don't believe there's a problem because we've talked to 2 members who are two of the closest of the 4 houses closest to this to those courts today who are in favor of this and would look forward to it. So again, that plus the acoustic fencing that we've talked about really make a difference, and we believe make this a very compatible use. Overall, I see a concern with outsiders. As I've stated on the record, it is clear and has been part of the deed restrictions that not only Glenmary development homeowners, but others have been, from the beginning of this development, permitted to be members here. These will be members who pay money and join the club. And yes, they will bring family members and others, Madam Chairman, and others that come to these clubs. And that is the standard throughout. It's reasonable, and it's confined, in fact, by the space. The number of seats in the restaurant limit the amount of use that will be there. Somebody comes on and decides they want to have a wedding, they will not have the 300 and 400 people that were mentioned at the DRC. This is I would venture that looking at that use, 200 would be tight in that space, and I think that's an extremely reasonable use. That's 101 parking spaces for 200 people. Assuming some of them are using the same cars and or Uber or something, there'll be spaces left over. So I don't think the concern with outsiders should be driving this. I think this is again, a perfect request for the best use of this property, and that's why this is put forward for you today. I believe you've heard from Mr. Huff, who is not against the club. So we're really talking about the most narrowest of issues. In the DRC meeting, in that record, the chairman of the board of the Homeowners Association also stated that he was in favor of the club. So we're really talking about particulars. And as Mr. Cox spoke, and it's on the record, that he represents a majority of the board members. And that is a distinct difference from, there are plenty of people who are nearby, closer to this, who are in favor, and you've heard from many of those today. Sorry to take so much time. I really hope that this would be a much simpler case, because that's what I believe it is. Any questions?
I do remember, Mr. McKenzie, do you have a problem with us having a condition of approval that would limit the hours of operation of?
We have proposed the 11 o'clock, if that's, we believe.
Well, that's what I wanted to know, if you all had a problem, because it's not stated as a condition now.
That's correct. And
Okay.
Would it help, just for clarification, to say something like the hours of operation of activities is limited to between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m.?
That's
Something like
fine. I don't think we're going to have the tea time issue of the 6 a.m. You said 6 a.m. to?
To 11 p.m.
6 a.m. and 11 p.m.
Thank you.
You're going to keep that written down. I don't have to write it, right? Okay, so that's a condition. And I will also, I don't know that we need to deal with how much the members' fees are, right? Okay, that's okay. We don't have to do that. But
I would just note that be mindful, in that one case, we had fees at such a low, like we had a $10 membership fee. It wasn't even really a barrier and didn't stop anybody from joining to use
right,
the
but
restaurant or
that they've already mentioned that they could have a monthly fee of $135. A household, I guess, is that what that is?
That's what a market, and we just learned that from the folks in the neighborhood who were, at these 2 meetings that we had with the real supporters of this project.
And I don't know if it will be an issue here, but you're approving the use. You could consider some type of condition that prohibits daily membership or other ways to get around just, issues.
Well,
You can. I'm not suggesting that you
Right,
do. I'm just
right.
giving you your options.
I'm, well, I guess we haven't gone into deliberation yet, so what I'm thinking, I better wait, I guess. I don't know.
Well, if we're going to talk, if there's a condition of approval, that would be helpful. It's
To do
more
it
helpful
now?
to do it now than close it when you can't. have-
Okay. Do any of you all have questions about the membership that we need to discuss with the applicant's representative now, before we close? Yes, Member Horton?
Madam Chair, I've got a question, not about membership.
Okay,
however.
but whatever, but if it needs to come from him, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. McKenzie, in your technical review, for those, should they park on the streets at any of these venues, did you get input from the fire department and emergency people as to what would happen and how you're going to mitigate that or address it?
I believe we have support from, and the project has been reviewed by the fire department, et cetera, all of the necessary authorities. But with respect to that, we live by the standards of the community, which are generally limiting parking on the streets throughout. So again, we have 101 spaces, I believe was the number. So that's not anticipated to be the problem as is stated.
And I'm assuming there's sidewalks, so if people do park on the street, they're not walking out in the street, they can come down the sidewalk?
Yeah, I think, there's
Correct.
sidewalks throughout. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
My other question is, I find it amazing that people think that this is going to be used every day of the week for like the wedding place, even the restaurants and et cetera. When it's a subdivision that's going to be for members only, and the only way that anybody else could come in, they'd have to be a guest of a member. Because you're not advertising
Right.
for the public or to the public. So I don't know why people would think you would have so many people coming in every day, because members not going to use it every day for a wedding, and they're not going to use it every day for the amphitheater. It's not going to be used every day. Only thing I could possibly see every day would be the golf driving range. In the summertime, yes, the pool and that kind of the situation. But weddings don't happen every day. And I'm just a little concerned about, and plus we did not receive any evidence regarding traffic for us to even vote on. Just help me understand does the applicant foresee being an everyday use other than the restaurant, and the restaurant's inside the clubhouse, correct?
That's correct.
Right, and the restaurant's not that large, so a lot of people could not come in every day, correct?
That's true.
I mean, that's the way I've seen clubhouses in other subdivisions. So I'm just appalled at what I'm hearing about a neighborhood community facility that would be good for a neighborhood. That's all, and I go to several.
Yeah, and you've heard from the supporters here, all developments, if you can have amenities generally, and we all can kind of gather that makes sense, that if you're buying a lot, having a community facility, clubhouse and all that is an amenity that brings value to the neighborhood. It's just also a better place to live. And people get to know each other and they hang out at the club and, their tacos or burgers or whatever it is, you have a place to go. And that plus a pool within season here and other uses just to have something to do and a place to go. So
And I think I need to also say that deed of restrictions we'd have nothing to do with deed of restrictions here.
that's correct.
So we have to go with what our laws and regulations are according to Louisville Metro government. Any questions from members before I close?
How many meal periods would the restaurant be open?
Well, that's just kind of like price. It's market. We'd like to have, 2 turns. I mean, just speaking restaurant speak, you want turns of the table and all that, but we would see. I mean, it's going to be as much as we can to start and make it available, and then it balances out with actual use. A lot of clubs are closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, and, we'll have to see what the members, how they show up and what they want to eat. The menu changes with, the menu and the use changes with the members' needs.
And you mentioned 300 memberships.
That's our goal, I think.
That would be like a family membership.
Right, because when you hear 300, as has been mentioned by your chair, it's not that 300 families are there. 300 is an idea of people who are willing to pay, and then they'll come when they can, and often are not there for a couple months or more at a time, and then are there for 3 nights in a row. I mean, it's just 300 is just an economic number, a goal that we're trying to shoot for.
No question? Okay. You question? Thank you, sir. The public hearing is closed. Oh, Chris, I need to ask you if you had anything. I'm sorry to add. And I guess you probably do need to address the wedding venue because they said you didn't have that in the staff report.
So if the board remembers, the wedding venue is something that the board has granted conditional use permits for private proprietary
Yes.
club specifically for a wedding venue.
Yes.
So this CUP has been used specifically for a wedding venue as the only use for a property. So
Yes.
that's why we didn't include that as something.
Well,
like
I understand,
restaurants.
but we got to make sure everybody understands, especially on the board.
So yeah, that use would be a specifically allowed use as a private club. The board has granted CUPs in the past specifically for that use. In terms of the parking situation, that's not something the board has a standard on.
No, it's Glenmary. I've been listening. I had to speak for this homeowner.
I'm going to have to ask the persons who are online to please mute yourself.
I'll take care of it. I muted them.
You did mute, you unmuted them?
I muted them.
Oh, thank you.
And the thing I'd add about the parking is, the parking is based on, it's the director's interpretation of the parking. However, I will tell you that in this particular case, since we had some uses here that the code specifically addresses, we have looked at those. So for example, a restaurant is a 1 space per 500 square foot requirement. I know the clubhouse building is 20,000 square feet. I don't believe the restaurant's taking up the entire 20,000, but if it did, that would only be 40 spaces as the minimum parking requirement. And then the wedding venue, as discussed, is approximately an 8,000 square foot structure. If you're looking at parking, it's somewhere between 16 and maybe 30 spaces at the most for a minimum. So you're right around even less than your 101 that's listed on the plan. So, in addition to that, we didn't talk about it, but they do have an area on their plan for golf cart parking. So there are golf carts used, I believe, in the community there. So there is parking for that. And of course, it's within the subdivision. So we anticipate there'll be people who would most likely walk to the facilities as well, or ride their bike, for example.
Would there be possibility for space, just grass area, if, say, there was going to be a wedding for 200 people and you wanted to hire a valet company and they park valet and they don't even use parking spaces?
So we have not talked about that with the applicant regarding an overflow parking area. Typically, we want parking on a hard and durable surface and not the grass. But however, there are some temporary activities where we've allowed that on a case-by-case basis, kind of a one-time thing or based on events. So that's something that, that we could look at, but we typically don't require that as a parking requirement. And Madam Chair, one thing I would say, I wasn't sure if the board wanted to address it or not. I know you didn't talk about it with the applicant, but whether you wanted a condition on the maximum number of people that could be, or, at an event.
And the wedding venue?
And the wedding venue is one, and then also for the driving range, I know they talked about there being 4 tee boxes. The board could do a condition on that too if the applicant agreed to it.
Do I need to be in deliberation for the, I know, but I mean, do I need to be in deliberation for the members to talk about that?
I think it wouldn't hurt to get the language, and then when you deliberate, you can decide whether or not you want to use it.
Okay, so you're going to give us the language.
The language, and Jeff, Steve, on the tee box, it would be the accessory driving range is limited to a maximum of 4 tee boxes. And then on the wedding venue, language could be the wedding venue use shall be limited to events of no more than 200 people or the maximum number of occupants allowed by the building/life safety code, whichever is more restrictive.
So you will read those to us?
Yes.
Okay, if the motion is to approve.
Right. If the board decides they want to use one,
Okay.
both, I'm prepared to read them.
Thank you. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Members, we can go into our discussion with concerns or questions, but you'll only be talking to members of the board, not to anyone in the courtroom other than who you see on this line. Is that understood?
Why are you looking at me?
No, well, I looked at all of you. I looked at every one of, did I not look at all of you? That's correct.
I know why you're
I did not look at this way yet, but I am now.
a friendly person.
But we do need to have a discussion, and you've heard us mention some conditions that could be added should can you put up the requirement? No, I think it was your list of statements that staff recommendations, I think it was, that could be put on the screen.
Yeah, there was a list of some concerns that were
Right,
addressed in
and
the
that's
staff
what I want to
report.
put up.
Okay. Joe, I think the chair is asking about in the PowerPoint, there's a list of, I think there's a page, a list of concerns there. I think that's what she was asking about.
No, I've got my own.
Okay, I mean, I didn't know that.
Oh, no. I was looking for this. Because we have to determine whether the hours of operation are necessary for the club and specifically in relation to the outdoor uses. We should determine whether a condition on the number of people using the proposed golf driving range should be placed on the CUP. And also, I think there was and I've already discussed, should we limit the hours of operation? That's up there. And the wedding venue,
On that screen, but is there a maximum capacity that should be placed?
should be placed.
And the condition we discussed just before we closed the public hearing wasn't necessarily limiting the number of people, but it was limiting the number of tee boxes, which effectively limits the number of people.
People, right. So that's what we need to be looking at this point, unless you all have some other concerns that were not brought up.
On the driving range, would hours as far as lighting, if it's going to be allowed to be used after dark, would it just be a daytime?
I'm thinking it would be, but
Yeah, the applicant is not proposing any lights for the driving range or nets either, so.
right. And if they did, they would have to be directed downward and away from residential uses, and that's in our regulations, in our zoning regulations. Anything else?
I'm just happy to tee it up and say I think it's a great addition to the area. And That's all I'm going to say.
Well, that's fine.
You get it, tee it up, the golf, the driving box. I drove it home, didn't I? No, seriously, let me expand on that. You know, I live in a community that's thriving, and it's all because of the interconnection of people coming and like you, Madam Chairman, when you have those facilities, and anytime we can convert a dilapidated structure and turn it into something that's thriving, it's good for everybody. I agree with the realtor that came up there and everybody else. I think it's a great, thing. I hope it all goes well with the neighbors.
Right. And if things don't and they don't go along with the plan, if the plan is approved, they can always come back here to make sure that things are done correctly. Just because there's a hearing doesn't mean that if things don't go the way they were planned according to the plan that is approved, somebody can report it and they will be back. So I don't have I understand that, and I hope members of the board and citizens as well understand, because things are approved, if they don't follow what's approved, there can always be something to happen, like a revoke.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Question.
Yes.
Excuse me. I guess this is for staff or who might answer this. The idea of limiting the number of people using the driving range, there's only 4 locations from what I've heard. How would you limit the number of people? It's already limited, is it not?
And so the language we ended up discussing before we closed the public hearing didn't focus on the number of people, but instead focused on the number of tee boxes. So the language I read, that if the board chose to add that as a condition of approval, would be that the accessory driving range is limited to a maximum of 4 tee boxes. And that sort of solves, you don't get into how many people are using the tee box, but I think the intent was to make sure that it didn't expand, that you didn't turn 4 tee boxes into 12 without coming back.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay, then if we are choosing to have a motion now, let me go to that page because I don't want to mess up either. I think the only thing we have before us then is the conditional use permit for the private proprietary club, which also includes the wedding venue. And we have, if we move to approve, or someone moves to approve, we have conditions to consider on page 8 of 8. In addition to, I didn't hear anyone objecting to any of the proposed conditions that we were thinking might need to be a part of consideration.
And if they were added, they would be added as conditions number 5, 6, and 7.
Right. So if someone chooses to move to approve, I would ask that numbers 5, 6, and 7 of the conditions would be read by our attorney for the record, so they would be correct. You all understand what I'm saying? So you either can approve or deny, but if you deny, you need to base it on something from the standard of review.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, ma'am, you may proceed.
Regarding 22 CUP-0175, I move that the conditional use permit for a private proprietary club in residential zoning district be approved, and I base that on the staff report, the staff findings and recommendations, and the testimony that we've heard to date. That motion is, it considers that we have conditions of approval 1 through 4 on page 8 of 8, and we have added 3 additional considerations that will be articulated by our attorney, and that all 7 be a part of the motion.
So to follow up, condition of approval number 5 would be the hours of operation of activities are limited to between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. Number 6, accessory driving range is limited to a maximum of 4 tee boxes. And number 7 would be the wedding venue use shall be limited to events of no more than 200 people or the maximum number of occupants allowed by building/life safety code, whichever is more restrictive.
I'll second that.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve 22 CUP 0175 for a conditional use permit for a private proprietary club in a residential zoning district as stated, with the addition of the conditions of approval in the staff report and 3 additional conditions that were added by the motioner. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Horton,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Budorf,
Yes.
Bozos,
Yes.
and Howard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have your conditional use permit. We just hope that everything will work out well for the community. I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute break to give me time to get some things in order for the next case.